So the next topic is contingency table. Remember again, contingency table is prepared for summarizing two categorical variables at the same time. And in the PowerPoint example, we looked at 400 invoices and we wanted to summarize the invoices by the amount of the invoice, small, medium, high, and then whether the invoices contain errors or not. And we're going to do the same thing with the funds example. So here, let's assume that we want to do a contingency table for the fund type and risk. Okay, risk like what we have before here. We did a summary table for risk, but now we want to expand some risk and then the fund type as well. And let's assume that we want to put the risk as columns and the fund type as rows. And once again, there are several ways in which this can be done. And we're going to do it using the pivot table approach. So go to the data tab right here. Now the data is already highlighted. Click insert pivot table. Okay, so the data source is identified. So do existing worksheet and then we'll put the contingency table. Once again, remember, we want to prepare the contingency table elsewhere where the spreadsheet is blank, and then we will move it over there. Okay, click OK. So now we want risk to be the columns. So we'll move the low to here. So we want low, average, and high. And then the type over here, and that is growth funds and value funds. And we want to count how many in each of these. So we can then just use fund number. So since that is a label, it simply counts how many funds fall into each category. Okay. Now you see that the columns are kind of not properly organized. That's because it's automatically fit to the size of the labels. So we'll call this frequency. So column label is really fund risk, or we'll simply say risk. Okay, row labels are fund type. Okay. Now we want low to move all the way up here. Select that. Now right click and you say move. Okay, up will only move to the left by 1, but if you choose this to the beginning, then the low goes all the way to the beginning. Okay, and now let's format the columns. Let's make sure that the columns are all of the same size. Okay. In pivot table, we have to do one more thing to make sure that the column widths once set remains set. If there is any change that you make to the pivot table, the column width will automatically get reshuffled. Okay, to prevent that from happening, select a cell inside the pivot table, right click, okay, and then go to pivot table options. In pivot table options, okay, you see there are lots of them here. See auto fit column width on update, so you uncheck that. Then the column widths will not get updated. It will remain like what you have set. Then you want to preserve the cell formatting on update, so we'll leave that checked. Okay. And one more thing, we want these labels to be aligned to the right like the numbers, so the numbers and the labels are aligned properly. Okay, now we are ready to move the contingency table over to where we want, which is right there. Okay, so now we can further prepare contingency tables as percentage of the total, percentage of the row, percentage of the column. So here, so we prepare the column labels here and the row labels. Okay, I'm using cell addresses, so if any change is made here, that change will automatically be made elsewhere. So this is our Okay. Now, if you want to express this as a percentage of the total funds, then we start with, remember, don't click into this cell in the pivot table. Instead, type the cell address C66 divided by F68, and F68 must be absolute referenced. Then let's express that as a percentage with one decimal place. Then you copy it this way and you copy 3 rows. So now let's put the border back. So now everything is expressed as a percentage of the grand total. So we can say that 45.3% of the funds, of the total funds, are low risk and growth funds. Okay. 0.9% are high risk and value funds. If you want to express the contingency table as a percentage of the row totals, then we can repeat the same contingency table, but instead of dividing by that total into each of the numbers, we will divide by the row total, which is going to be like this now. So prepare the skeleton like that. Okay, so now we're going to use C66 divided by, instead of dividing it by F68, we divide by F66, which is that. Okay. Now we want to be able to copy this across different columns and different rows also. So when you copy across different columns, the grand total must always come from column F. So column F is fixed. But if you copy this down here, 66 should change to 67. So row should be flexible, column should be fixed. So your absolute reference should go like that. Okay, so then if you copy this, make that into a percentage, copy this across, okay, and copy it like that. Okay, and we want to copy these three, yeah, like that. Okay, so this will be the sum of. Okay, so now we have a contingency table that expresses numbers as a percentage of the row total. So here, the way to interpret this would be like, if you take this number, we can say of all the growth funds, okay, this one, the 100% being the row, okay, of all the growth funds, 32.6 are average risk. Okay, it's not about the totality of all funds, it's only for that given row. Now we can do a contingency table with column percentages, and once again we have to set up the skeleton and then populate the numbers in a slightly different way. First let's set up the skeleton. Okay. Now we'll populate the contingency table. Here this will be C66. Okay. Now divide by the column total, which will be C68. So divided by C68. Now this time, as we copy across different columns, columns should change, but the row should remain fixed at 68 as you copy across different rows. So that would be the percentage. Okay. So now copy this way. Let's put the border back and then copy across. Now this time the interpretation would be according to the columns. So for example here 81.3% would mean that of all the funds with average risk, 81.3% are growth funds. So given that it is average, so each column, given that particular column, what percentage falls within a given fund type.